To affect positive change, dig it. Universal basic income. Poor and middle class people gon' get some. 2 G's per month, the work we running. Bottom up economics, get the money coming. Now dig, time to change the economic system. No more poor and middle class victims. Poor and middle class pockets getting fatter. Money for the least of these is what matters. Bottom up economics is where it begins. Rich folks get profit on the back end. The poor and middle class spend the money. The spent money stimulates the economy. Everyone benefits from bottom to top. When poor and middle class cash money drops, we talking about universal basic income. Poor and middle class people gon' get some. Corrupt corporations. What's up, everybody?
Welcome to BGMG Radio with Byron Goines and Meshelle Goines.
Let's get into today's lecture entitled, Is the Republican Party for Christians? Today's lecture is entitled, Is the Republican Party for Christians? If you are a Christian, you should be voting, because concerning the government, the Apostle Paul stated the following in Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 7. And we are reading from the New International Version of the Bible for the benefit of those who may not understand the King James Version of the Bible. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. In these passages of Scripture, the Apostle Paul makes it perfectly clear that Christians should be following the Constitution of the United States of America, which lays out the government of the United States of America and includes voting. Now, we've established the fact that if you're a Christian, you should be voting. Concerning which political party Jesus Christ would support, a common misconception is that the Republican Party is the political party of Christians, and this is not true or factual. This is just another trick used by some to deceive as many people as possible into a mindset that will get them in the Republican Party and keep them in the Republican Party. Now, the question remains, which political party should Christians support? Should Christians support the Republican Party, or should Christians support the Democratic Party? Because as it stands politically today, there are 2 major political parties to choose from. Other choices may show up on the ballot whenever they show up on the ballot, but for the most part, it's just the 2 major political parties to choose from. And in order to answer this question, we'll read the words of Jesus Christ later in the lecture and look at what he says about it. But before we do that, let's look at some facts concerning today's Republican Party. Before I begin, let me state that we're a black husband and wife team of political activists, working to enlighten and inform the people of the United States on issues they may be unaware of. And this is an important issue that needs to be addressed. We don't want anyone wondering if we're black or not. Concerning race in the United States of America, out of the 2 major political parties, which political party would Jesus Christ support? Would Jesus Christ support a political party containing and supported by abolitionists? Or would Jesus Christ support a political party containing and supported by white supremacists? The Republican Party during the time of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass contained and was supported by abolitionists. Today's Republican Party contains and is supported by white supremacists. Anyone who knows about Jesus Christ knows unequivocally that Jesus Christ would not support a political party containing and supported by white supremacists. The Republican Party has changed from an abolitionist party to a white supremacist party. This is a 360-degree change. A political party with white supremacists as supporters should be a political party that United States citizens with Christian values should not want to be a part of. The only people who should be remaining in today's Republican Party should be their white supremacist supporters. And this brings forth the question, what are black people doing in the Republican Party? Black people, what are you doing in the Republican Party when the Republican Party has been endorsed and supported by white supremacists for generations? The white Southern segregationist, Senator Strom Thurmond, who ran for president in 1948, filibustered the Civil Rights Act of 1957, left the Democratic Party and became a Republican in 1964, and afterwards, as a Republican, Thurmond voted against the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Strom Thurmond had supporters who followed him into the Republican Party, as well as there were people all throughout the South with the segregationist mindset, who became Republicans when the Democratic Party endorsed civil rights for black people. This is the reason why the Republican Party is as big as it is in the South and has as much power as it does in the South. The Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass does not exist today. When you as a black person stay in the Republican Party after you find out about the white racist modern history of the Republican Party, you dishonor all of the freedom fighters who have fought and died on behalf of the black struggle in the United States of America. You dishonor all of the black lives that have been taken by police throughout the United States of America. How can you be a black Republican after hearing evidence of the state of today's Republican Party where it concerns its connection to white supremacy? It is understood and recognized that there are some black Republicans who are ignorant of these facts, but are now being educated through this lecture. No black person should be in the Republican Party today. Black people who have ideological differences with the Democratic Party should be independents. And if the Republican Party does not change back to the Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass and reject all white supremacists, the Republican Party risks following in the footsteps of the Whig political party, which no longer exists. For those who may not know, prior to the start of the Republican Party by abolitionists, there was a political party called the Whig Party, which contained pro-slavery white supremacists and abolitionists. The Democratic Party was the other major political party, and it was a pro-slavery white supremacist political party. There was a split in the Whig Party between the abolitionists and pro-slavery white supremacists concerning slavery. And as a result, the abolitionists left the Whig Party and started a brand new political party, which they named the Republican Party. Abraham Lincoln was selected as the Republican Party's first candidate for President of the United States. The popularity of the Republican Party grew as it replaced the Whig Party as the other major political party in the United States. The Whig Party eventually disappeared from existence, leaving the Republican Party and the Democratic Party as the two major political parties in the United States. Today's Republican Party is in the same shape the Whig Party was in back then before its collapse. Black people, white people who support the black struggle, and others who support the black struggle are going to start leaving the Republican Party because they want a nation where everyone is equal, and they refuse to be a part of a political party that has white supremacists as supporters. And once the split in the Republican Party happens, whether there's another political party formed to replace it or not, the Republican Party will eventually disappear from existence, because there will not be enough white supremacists in the United States to sustain its power politically. Because once campaign finance reform is enacted and lobby reform is enacted, big money will have no place in politics, and as a result, capitalists and their corporations will not be able to buy political office, and the will of the people will finally control the United States as written in the United States Constitution. And anyone remaining in a Republican Party where the remaining supporters are mainly white supremacists should feel shame for being part of that political party. According to the news media, a number of people have left the Republican Party since Donald Trump has been in office. And since Donald Trump has a base of supporters in the Republican Party who will undoubtedly not leave the Republican Party, but will continue to support Donald Trump, there will continue to be a split in the Republican Party between those with the values of the Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass and those with the values of Donald Trump. This split will continue to cause more and more people to leave the party, which will continue to hurt the Republican Party. Eventually, there may possibly be another political party started by someone which will replace the Republican Party as the other major political party in the United States. But until if or when that day happens, those who leave the Republican Party can become independents, which is what they should do if they have ideological differences with the Democratic Party. But Jesus Christ makes perfectly clear the reason why the least of these are important, which we'll read later in the lecture. The Republican Party can change and has the opportunity to change, but will it change? That remains to be seen. Today's Democratic Party is like the Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And in my opinion, if they were living today, they would be independents or Democrats. They would not be Republicans. The Democratic Party is pro-choice concerning abortion, and the Republican Party claims to be pro-life concerning abortion. But after the child is born, Republican ideological history shows that they care nothing about the child from the point of birth forward. Otherwise, they would seek to help Americans who are struggling financially through no fault of their own. There are children now on the streets throughout America, homeless, with no food to eat. So it is hypocritical for the Republican Party to claim that it is pro-life concerning abortion, but after that child is born and it faces the possibility of starving to death, freezing to death, or catching and dying from COVID-19 because the parents did not have money to provide a home for their children through no fault of their own, where are the Republicans? There are homeless families on the street living in conditions where they and their children are at a greater risk for catching and dying from COVID-19 because of the conditions in which they are living. Republican actions in Congress show how they really feel about children after they're born. In March 2020, the CARES Act was passed that included a $1,200 stimulus payment for the American people. And it's not logical for one to think that $1,200 was supposed to last Americans the rest of the year who are struggling financially through no fault of their own, until they finally received $600 at the end of 2020 or beginning of 2021. The American people need to be made whole. The Republican Party has proven itself time and time again to be hypocritical. So when you hear Republicans say they're pro-life, remember 2020, Republicans, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, if you're a person who is pro-life, you should be an independent, not a Republican. Concerning the death penalty, the Republican Party is not pro-life. They are pro-death penalty. The Republican Party kept the 2016 platform, which states the following concerning the death penalty on page 40. The constitutionality of the death penalty is firmly settled by its explicit mention in the Fifth Amendment. With the murder rate soaring in our great cities, we condemn the Supreme Court's erosion of the right of the people to enact capital punishment in their states. This information from the Republican Party platform clearly shows Republican Party support for capital punishment. On the other hand, the Democratic Party is pro-life concerning the death penalty and does not support capital punishment. Concerning war, Republicans support war, which undoubtedly result in the death of people and generate massive profits for capitalists and their corporations, as in the case of the Iraq War. And this shows another area where Republicans are not pro-life. War results in the death of some people and profits for the capitalists. And anyone who knows foreign policy should know that war should always be the last option on the table. Diplomacy is always the option that should be used. And before declaring war, the administration in charge should be thoroughly sure that it is moving in the right direction, which means that proper due diligence should be done in all areas. There should not be any doubt as to whether there is a justified reason to declare war. War should not be taken lightly and should only be used as a last resort. Now, neither political party is perfect by far, and one with ideological differences with both political parties have the option of becoming an independent and voting for the political party that is closest to that person's ideology. And by going by what has been taught so far and what Jesus Christ is saying in the scriptures that we're going to read, between the two political parties, where it concerns the least of these, the Democratic Party is clearly the better choice by far. The least of these in society are those who are struggling to make it. And Jesus Christ made some serious statements concerning the least of these that all Christians should read and follow. And we're going to read it now. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46, Jesus Christ states the following. And we're reading from the New International Version of the Bible for the benefit of those who may not understand the King James Version of the Bible. Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46 reads as follows. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Then he will say to those on his left, Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They also will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? He will reply, Truly I tell you, Whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46, Jesus Christ gives all nations on earth, which include all Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, an example of how the least of these should be treated. Jesus Christ clearly states in these verses that those who did for the least of these inherited the kingdom of heaven, and those who did not do for the least of these were cast into hell. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46, Jesus Christ clearly outlines his concern for the least of these throughout the generations of time, including this, the 21st century. Those who call themselves Christians need to understand that Jesus Christ clearly stated his concern for the least of these, which clearly shows which political party Christians should support in this regard, and the reasons why Christians should support the political party that focuses on the least of these. Remember, Jesus Christ clearly states in these verses that those who did for the least of these inherited the kingdom of heaven, and those who did not do for the least of these were cast into hell. Republican economic philosophy is trickle-down economics, which is also called supply-side economics or top-down economics. Republican economic philosophy benefits the rich to the detriment of the poor and middle class. Christians in the United States, remember what Jesus Christ said about the least of these. Regardless of political party affiliation or independent status, does the political party you support have an ideology that supports helping the least of these, or does the political party you support have an ideology that supports corporations and the rich, and fight against legislation to help the least of these? Those of you who have been listening to our broadcasts and following us online know that we have been talking about $2,000 in monthly United States government guaranteed universal basic income for years. Concerning an economic stimulus for the American people as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we believe the American people need to be made whole by the United States government, and legislation consisting of $2,000 per month for the American people, with retroactive payments back to April 2020, should be passed by both houses of Congress and signed into law by the President. Doing this will help struggling Americans get ahead and undoubtedly stimulate the economy and create many jobs throughout the United States as a result of the demand. And the Federal Reserve System should be used to fund the economic stimulus payments. Now, looking at all the information covered in today's lecture concerning the two political parties, and going by the scriptures we read earlier concerning Jesus Christ and the least of these, the Republican Party is clearly not the political party for followers of Jesus Christ. As I stated earlier, neither political party is perfect by far, but between the two political parties, where it concerns the least of these, the Democratic Party is clearly the better choice by far. Remember, in the example given by Jesus Christ, those who did for the least of these inherited the kingdom of heaven, and those who did not do for the least of these were cast into hell. Now, as a Christian, which political party do you support? Think about this. We thank you for your time. Did you dig today's broadcast? Contact us at bgmgradio.com and let us know. If you're listening on YouTube, click subscribe so you can be notified about new uploads.
Thank you for listening to BGMG Radio with Byron Goines and Meshelle Goines.
To effect positive change, dig it. Universal basic income. Poor and middle class people gon' get some. 2 G's per month, the work we running. Bottom up economics, get the money coming. Now dig, time to change the economic system. No more poor and middle class victims. Poor and middle class pockets getting fatter. Money for the least of these is what matters. of economics is where it begins. Rich folks get profit on the back end. The poor and middle class spend the money. The spent money stimulates the economy. Everyone benefits from bottom to top. With poor and middle class, cash money drops. We talking about universal basic income. Poor and middle class people gon' get some. Corrupt